love for me. Every day you make me feel special. Yeah, you treat me like I'm your queen. Oh, oh, you make me the happiest I've ever been. Oh, oh, and you treat me like I'm your queen. I'm the happiest I've ever been. You treat me like I'm your queen. If I put what you mean to me in a letter, I'd spend a lifetime to write it all down. I can't keep up with what you do for me. There are too many times to count. I'm a mess, you call me royalty. Can't explain your perfect love for me. Every day you make me feel special. Yeah, you treat me like I'm your queen. Oh, oh, you make me the happiest I've ever been. Oh, oh, and you treat me like I'm your queen. Like I'm your queen, yeah, queen. Happiest I've ever been. Oh, you treat me like I'm your queen. I'm your queen. Hey. You treat me like I'm your queen. You know how to make me feel better. 'Cause of you, nothing keeps me down. You've pulled me out of the deepest darkness. Took my hand and gave me a crown. I'm a mess, you call me royalty. Can't explain your perfect love for me. Every day you make me feel special. Yeah, you treat me like I'm your queen. Oh, oh, you make me the happiest I've ever been. Oh, oh, and you treat me like I'm your queen. I'm the happiest I've ever been. You treat me like I'm your queen. If I put what you mean to me in a letter, I'd spend a lifetime to write it all down. I can't keep up with what you do for me. There are too many times to count. I'm a mess, you call me royalty. Can't explain your perfect love for me. Every day you make me feel special. Yeah, you treat me like I'm your queen. Oh, oh, you make me the happiest I've ever been. Oh, oh, and you treat me feel better. Cause of you, nothing keeps me down. You've pulled me out of the deepest darkness. Took my hand and gave me a crown. I'm a mess, you call me royalty. Can't explain your perfect love for me. Every day you make me feel special. Yeah, you treat me like I'm your queen. Oh, oh, you make me the happiest I've ever been. Oh, oh, and you treat me like I'm your queen. I'm the happiest I've ever been. You treat me like I'm a queen. If I put what you mean to me in a letter, I'd spend a lifetime to write it all down. I can't keep up with what you do for me. There are too many times to count. I'm a mess, you call me royalty. Can't explain your perfect love for me. Every day you make me feel special. Yeah, you treat me like I'm your queen. Oh, oh, you make me the happiest I've ever been. Oh, oh, and you treat me like I'm a queen. Like I'm your queen, yeah, queen. Happiest I've ever been. Oh, you treat me like I'm your queen. I'm your queen. Yeah. You treat me like I'm your queen. You know how to make me feel better. Cause of you, nothing keeps me down. You've pulled me out of the deepest darkness. Took my hand and gave me a crown. I'm a mess, you call me royalty. Can't explain your perfect love for me. Every day you make me feel special. Yeah, you treat me like I'm your queen. Oh, oh, you make me the happiest I've ever been. Oh, oh, and you treat me like I'm your queen. I'm the happiest I've ever been.
Factor, thank you so much for the resub. And Super Shadowkin. Oh my god. You got a streak. Oh my god. Yeah, so... Phone no good with VTube Studio. All I did was keep draining my battery. And I don't think I have the right plug for it, so yeah. And Shadow, thank you so much for the... Oh my god, the 1,000 bits. Oh my god. Why are my alerts not working? I know I just added YouTube alerts, but still, oh my god, why is it not working? Hello, Al, how are you? Catch the Lab is also being hella slow. Do I have to refresh this shit again? Or should I just close it? Oh dear. Let me go into here. Let me open up Streamlabs. By that I mean Stream Elements. We don't use Streamlabs here. Not Castro Labs. Let me open up StreamerBot so I can see chat for a bit. Why is it telling me to update my information? I already did this shit. Okay, streamer tools overlay. Here. Is Stream Elements not recognizing? Is that what the issue is? Let me go under Twitch. Casaro, hello, how are you? Okay, let's see here. Take this. Yeah, I'm probably just gonna close Caster Labs to open it up again just because the chat is so slow on the screen. I don't know why it's doing that. Let me see. Isn't it registering? Did it even register? Yeah, it says right here. It's not even playing. Interesting. Okay, so let me go into the scene. We're just gonna re-add another one. It's because I don't know why it's doing that. Mind you, it was just working fine when I was testing it before. Which is so weird. Ziggy, hello, how are you? We're trying to figure out why my alerts are not showing up. And I currently don't have my camera. That's still packed up somewhere. So yeah, I just have the cute little emotes on the screen. These are the new emotes! For both of my outfits. Yes. Okay, we're gonna try this again. So, will it let me replay? There we go! I feel accomplished today, guys. I feel so accomplished today. Okay, that's one problem solved. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so I'm actually gonna close Casual Labs for like 2 seconds. So we're gonna close Castro Labs. Like completely exit Caster Labs. Now we're gonna reopen Caster Labs. Oh my god, 150 pages, that's a lot. I wish you luck on that. Well, I guess it isn't that bad. Is it like you're physically at the campus, or is it all online? Because I know mine was like that, and where like everything was like, it was like, I think it was an 8-week course, but like they go by terms, not really semesters. Okay, that's probably why. Yeah. Yeah, definitely online classes are better. Better. Like if you're a full-time working adult, you'll definitely benefit from the online classes because like you can just do that around your schedule, compared to like actually going to a physical school. That's like almost impossible. Yeah. So we are reading Sherlock Holmes today. So most of the story. Excuse me, I'm still kind of sick. I still have the cough. So yeah, when I first started streaming, we did originally start with Sherlock Holmes. So yes. So we did start with the 2 of the short stories. So that is up on YouTube already. Then we went to the then we already read what did we read already? It's been a while, so I honestly don't remember. Hold on, I have the document right here. Okay, so as of right now, where we stand, we've read the first 2 stories of The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. We read A Study in Scarlet, and we did finish up The Sign of 4 already. All of those are already on my YouTube channel. They are between the Sherlock Holmes playlist and the ASMR reading playlist. So the Sign of 4s are in that particular one. I am aware, Al, that we did start her book. But we are reading Sherlock Holmes today. I am just reminding everyone what we started in terms of Sherlock Holmes. So those are the stories we did read. We are going to be continuing now that we're all caught up, because I realized you had to go a particular order. There are not really a definite order you could go through in terms of Sherlock Holmes stories, but I kind of want to go in a certain order just so we're kind of inconsistent, because as publishing, the way they published it wasn't exactly in order. So the order we are going with was The Study of Scarlet, The Sign of 4, which we did read already. Everything is on YouTube. And now we're going back to The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, the short stories. So as I said, we did read the first 2 already. That is on YouTube already. So today's story is A Case of Identity, which is the I think it's the third short story in this. Yeah, and there's 12 short stories in this book. So I did figure out how to zoom the page just because the text was so small, but I think I want to zoom it in a little bit more. Okay. Now let me just make sure. So I will be posting this. I will be posting a story in both chats. Let me see if I can actually. Will it show up in both? Okay, I don't see it in YouTube's side. Like YouTube's chat room. Yeah, no. So let me just do this manually for YouTube. Now, will it let me pin it? That is the question. God, why is this so small? Pin message. There we go. It is now pinned. And we are going to do the same thing for Twitch. Alright, so that is what we are reading today. As I said, as I mentioned on the last test stream, for this year we will be doing multi-streaming. So we are live on Twitch, and we are also doing a vertical stream on YouTube. And my computer is pretty much being fine. Thank you, Al. So it is the typical rain, and I added was it fire, like a fireplace fire? It's considered a fire cracking. I think it fits the same. Yeah, so as of right now, computer seems to be holding up fine with both. Because I know when I did the test stream, it was fine. So we're gonna see how. I know Sherlock Holmes stories are like pretty long. I think like the last time we tried it, it took a couple hours. Now, before we do that, I need to finish my Twitter post. I don't remember what were my tags. Is it this one? And what the hell? We're gonna use this one. I think so. I know some of them is with Digiko, some of them was with Digigirl. To the adventures of Sherlock. I can't spell today. Why is it telling me? Oh, they wanted me to capitalize the T for YouTube, bro. Let's see. Links and audio or in comments. Okay, so I'm gonna cut some of these out because I really don't need it. Don't need Super Sweet Bot. But what we do need is, we're gonna put in ASMR, we're gonna put in bedtime stories, we're gonna put in, of course, Sherlock Holmes, because that's what we are reading today. Odd. That usually happens like when you're typing super fast or you're writing super fast, you're not really thinking about how you're spelling the words. And then it turns out to be wrong, and then you go back and say, oh, I spelled it wrong. Oops. I don't know why a tag for Sherlock Holmes didn't pop up. That is hella weird. You would think there would be tags for that. So we're gonna post that, but then I still have to post the links. So we're gonna send now. Okay, so we have Twitch.tv / girl. Okay, so we have that, and then YouTube.com. Hello, Copyright. How are you? And thanks so much for the follow. Welcome to the kingdom. How are you doing today? /. Oh, I could have just copy and pasted. Oops. I'm doing well. Okay, and we are done with the Twitter. Alright, now that that's out of the way. Okay. And let me just close all these programs. I don't need them open. Okay, and that should be good. I just want to turn one of these effects on from my side because it's so quiet and I don't like quiet. Okay, I think this one's not this one. Where is that effect? There we go. Oh, much better. Alright. So today we'll be reading A Case of Identity. My dear fellow, said Sherlock Holmes, as we sat on either side of the fire in his lodgings at Baker Street. Life is infinitely stranger than anything which the mind of man could invent. We would not dare to conceive the things which are really mere commonplaces of existence. If we could fly out of that window hand in hand, hover over this great city, gently remove the roofs, and peep in at the queer things which are going on, the strange coincidences, the plannings, the cross purposes, the wonderful chains of events working through generations and leading to the most rare result. It would make all fiction with its conventionalities and foreseen conclusions most stale and unprofitable. And yet, I am not not convinced of it, I answered. The cases which come to light in the papers are, as a rule, bold enough and vulgar enough. We have in our police reports realism pushed to its extreme limits, and yet the result is, it must be confessed, neither fascinating nor artistic. A certain selection and discretion must be used in producing a realistic effect, remarked Holmes. This is wanting in the police reports, where more stress is laid, perhaps upon the platitudes of the magistrate than upon the details, which to an observer contains the vital essence of the whole matter. Depend upon it, there is nothing so unnatural as the commonplace. I smiled and shook my head. I can't quite understand your thinking so, I said. Of course, in your position of unofficial advisor and helper to everybody who is absolutely puzzled throughout 3 continents, you are brought in. I feel like I missed a line. Hold that thought. Yeah, I did. Oops. Hold on, let me review that. I smiled and shook my head. I can't quite understand your thinking so, I said. Of course, in your position of unofficial advisor and helper to everybody who is absolutely puzzled throughout 3 continents, you are brought in contact with all that is strange and bizarre. But here, I picked up the morning paper from the ground. Let us put it to a practical test. Here is the first heading upon which I come. A husband's cruelty to his wife. There is half a column of print, but I know without reading it that it is all perfectly familiar to me. There is, of course, the other woman, the drink, the push, the blow, the bruise, the sympathetic sister or landlady. The crudest of writers could invent nothing more crude. Indeed, your example is an unfortunate one for your argument, said Holmes, taking the paper and glancing his eyes down it. This is the Dundas separation case, and as it happens, I was engaged in clearing up some small points and connections with it. The husband was a teetotaler. There was no other woman, and the conduct complained of was that he had drifted into the habit of winding up every meal by taking out his false teeth and hurling them at his wife. Which, you will allow, is not an action likely to occur to the imagination of the average storyteller. Take a pinch of snuff, Doctor, and acknowledge that I have scored over you in your example. He held out his snuff box of old gold with a great amethyst in the center of the lid. Its splendor was in such contrast to his homely ways and simple life that I could not help commenting upon it. Ah, said he, I forgot that I had not seen you for some weeks. It is a little souvenir from the King of Bohemia in return for my assistance in the case of the Irene Adler papers. And the ring? I asked, glancing at a remarkable brilliance which sparkled upon his finger. It was from the reigning family of Holland, though the matter in which I served them was of such delicacy that I cannot confide it even to you, who have been good enough to chronicle 1 or 2 of my little problems. And have you any on hand just now? I asked with interest. Some 10 or 12, but none which present any feature of interest. They are important, you understand, without being interesting. Indeed, I have found that it is usually an unimportant matter, that there is a field for the observation and for the quick analysis of cause and effect, which gives the charm to an investigation. The larger crimes are apt to be the simpler, for the bigger the crime, the more obvious, as a rule, is the motive. In these cases, say for one rather intricate matter, which has been referred to me from Mount Thelius, there is nothing which presents any features of interest. It is possible, however, that I may have something better before very many minutes are over. For this is one of my clients, or I am much mistaken. He had risen from his chair and was standing between the parted blinds, gazing down into the dull, neutral-tinted London street. Looking over his shoulder, I saw that on the pavement opposite there stood a large woman with a heavy fur bow around her neck, and a large curling red feather in a broad-brimmed hat, which was tilted in a coquettish Duchess of Devonshire fashion over her ear. From under this great canopy she peeped up in a nervous, hesitating fashion at our windows, while her body oscillated backwards and forward, and her fingers fidgeted with her glove buttons. Suddenly, with a plunge, as of the swimmer who leaves the bank, she hurried across the road, and we heard the sharp clunk of the bell. I have seen those symptoms before, said Holmes, throwing his cigarette into the fire. Oscillation upon the pavement always means an affaire de coeur. She would like advice, but is not sure that the matter is not too delicate for communication. And yet, even here, we may discriminate. When a woman has been seriously wronged by a man, she no longer oscillates, and the usual symptoms is a broken bell wire. Here we may take it that there is a love matter, but that the maiden is not so much angry as perplexed or grieved. But here she comes in person to resolve our doubts. As we spoke, there was a tap at the door, and the boy in buttons entered to announce Miss Mary Sutherland's, while the lady herself loomed behind his small black figure, like a full-sailed merchantman, behind a tiny pilot boat. Sherlock Holmes welcomed her with the easy courtesy for which he was remarkable, and had closed the door and bowed her into an armchair. He looked her over in a minute, and yet abstracted fashion which was peculiar to him. Do you not find, he said, that with your short sight it is a little trying to do so much typewriting? I did at first, she answered, but now I know where the letters are without looking. Then suddenly realizing the full purport of his words, she gave a violent start and looked up with fear and astonishment upon her broad, good-humored face. You've heard about me, Mr. Holmes, she cried. How could you know all of that? Never mind, said Holmes, laughing. It is my business to know things. Perhaps I have trained myself to see what others overlook. If not, Why should you come to consult me? I come to you, sir, because I heard of you from Miss Etheridge, whose husband you found so easily when the police and everyone had given him up for dead. Oh, Mr. Holmes, I wish you would do as much for me. I'm not rich, but still I have 100 a year in my own right. Besides, the little that I make by the machines, I won't give it all to know what has become of Mr. Hodgmer Angel. Why did you come away to consult me in such a hurry? Asked Mr. Holmes, with his fingertips together and his eyes to the ceiling. Again, a startled look came over the somewhat vacuous face of Miss Mary Sutherland. Yes, I did bang out of the house, she said, for it made me angry to see the easy way in which Mr. Windibank, that is my father, took it all. He would not go to the police. He would not go to you. And so at last, as he would do nothing and kept on saying that there was no harm done, it made me mad, and I just on with my things and came right away to you. Your father, said Holmes. Your stepfather, surely, since the name is different. Yes, my stepfather. I call him father, though it sounds funny too, for he is only 5 years and 2 months older than myself. Goddamn. And your mother is alive? Oh yes, mother is alive and well. I wasn't best pleased, Mr. Holmes, when she married again so soon after father's death, and a man who was nearly 15 years younger than herself. Father was a plumber and Tottenham Court Road, and he left a tidy business behind him, which mother carried on with Mr. Hardy, the foreman. But when Mr. Windibank came, he made her sell the business, for he was very superior, being a traveler in wine. They got $4,700 for the goodwill and interest, which wasn't near as much as father could have got if he had been alive. I had expected to see Mr. Holmes impatient under his rumbling and inconsequential narrative, but on the contrary, he had listened with the greatest concentration of attention. Your own little income, he asked. Does it come out of the business? Oh no, sir. It's quite separate and was left me by my uncle Ned in Auckland. It is a New Zealand stock, paying 4.5%. £2,500 was the amount, but I can only touch the interest. You interest me extremely, said Holmes. And since you draw so large a sum as 100 a year with what you earn into the bargain, you no doubt travel a little and indulge yourself in every way. I believe that a single lady can get on very nicely upon an income of about £60. I could do with much less than that, Mr. Holmes, but you understand that as long as I live at home, I don't wish to be burdened to them, and so they have the use of the money just while I am staying with them. Of course, that is only just for the time. Mr. Windibank draws my interest every quarter and pays it over to mother, and I find that I can do pretty well with what I earn as typewriting. It brings me 2 pence a sheet, and I can often do 15 to 20 sheets in a day. You have made your position very clear to me, said Holmes. This is my friend, Dr. Watson, before whom you can speak as freely as before myself. Let me tell us now all about your connection with Mr. Casimir Angel. I flashed a stole over Miss Sutherland's face, and she picked nervously at the fringe of her jacket. I met him first at the gasfitters' ball, she said. They used to send father tickets when he was alive, and then afterwards they remembered us and sent them to mother. Mr. Windibank did not wish us to go. He never did wish us to go anywhere. He would get quite mad if I wanted so much as to join a Sunday school treat. But this time, I was set on going, and I would go. For what right had he to prevent? He said the folk were not fit for us to know, when all father's friends were to be there. And he said that I had nothing fit to wear, when I had my purple plush that I had never so much as taken out of the drawer. At last, when nothing else would do, he went off to France upon the business of the firm. But we went, mother and I, with Mr. Hardy, who used to be our foreman, and it was there I met Mr. Casimir Angel. I suppose, said Holmes, that when Mr. Winterbank came back from France, he was very annoyed at you having gone to the ball. Oh, well, he was very good about it. He laughed, I remember, and shrugged his shoulders, and said there was no use denying anything to a woman, or she would have her way. I see. Then at the gasfitters' balls met, as I understand, a gentleman called Mr. Casimir Angel? Yes, sir. I met him that night, and he called next day to ask if we had got home all safe. And after that, we met him, that is to say, Mr. Holmes. I met him twice for walks. But after that, father came back again, and Mr. Casimir Angel could not come to the house anymore. No. Well, you know father didn't like anything of the sort. He wouldn't have any visitors if he could help it. And he used to say that a woman should be happy in her own family circle. But then, as I used to say to mother, a woman wants her own circle to begin with. I had not got mine yet. But how about Mr. Casimir Angel? Did he make no attempt to see you? Well, father was going off to France again in a week, and Casimir wrote and said that it would be safer and better not to see each other until he had gone. He could write in the meantime, and he used to write every day. I took the letters in the morning, so there was no need for father to know. Were you engaged to the gentleman at this time? Oh yes, Mr. Holmes. We were engaged after the first walk that we took. Casimir, Mr. Angel, was a cashier in an office in London Hall Street and... What office? That's the worst of it, Mr. Holmes. I don't know. Where did he live then? He slept on the premises. And you don't know his address? No, except that it was London Hill Hall Street. Where did you address your letters then? To the London Hall Street post office. To be left to call for. He said that if they were sent to the office, he would be cafted by all the other clerks about having letters from a lady, so I offered to typewrite them, like he did his. But he wouldn't have that, for he said that when I wrote them, they seemed to come from me. But when they were typewritten, he always felt that the machine had come between us. That will just show you how fond he was of me, Mr. Holmes, and the little things that he would think of. It was mostly suggestive, said Holmes. It has long been an axiom of mine that the little things are definitely the most important. Can you remember any other little things about Mr. Casimir Angel? He was a very shy man, Mr. Holmes. He would rather walk with me in the evening than in the daylight, or he said that he hated to be conspicuous, very retiring, and the gentlemanly he was. Even his voice was gentle. He had the plenty solid glands when he was young, he told me, and it had left him with a weak throat and a hesitating, whispery fashion of speech. He was always well dressed, very neat and plain, but his eyes were weak, just as mine are, and he wore tinted glasses against the glare. Well, and what happened when Mr. Winnebet, your stepfather, returned from France? Mr. Casimir Angel came to the house again, and proposed that we should marry before father came back. He was in dreadful earnest, and made me swear, with my hands on the testament, that whatever happened, I would always be true to him. Mother said she was quite right to make me swear, and that it was a sign of his passion. Mother was all in his favor from the first, and was even fonder of him than I was. Then, when they talked of marrying within the week, I began to ask about father. But they both said never to mind about father, but just to tell him afterwards, and mother said she would make it all right with him. I didn't quite like that, Mr. Holmes. It seemed funny that I should ask him leave, as he was only a few years older than me. But I didn't want to do anything on the sly, so I wrote to father at Bordeaux, where the company has its France offices, but the letter came back to me on the very morning of the wedding. It missed him then? Yes, sir, for he had started to England just before it arrived. Ha, that was unfortunate. Your wedding was arranged then for the Friday. Was it to be in church? Yes, sir, but very quietly. It was to be at St. Xavier, near King's Cross, and we were to have breakfast afterwards at the St. Pancras Hotel. Casimir came for us in a hansom, but as there were two of us, he put us both into it, and stuffed himself into a four-wheeler, which happened to be the only other cab in the street. We got to the church first. When the four-wheeler drove up, we waited for him to step out, but he never did. And when the cabman got down from the box and looked, there was no one there. The cabman said that he could not imagine what had become of him, for he had seen him get in with his own eyes. That was the last Friday, Mr. Holmes, and I have never seen or heard anything since then to throw any light upon what become of him. It seems to me that you have been very shamefully treated, said Holmes. Oh, no, sir. It was too good and kind to leave me so. Why, all the morning he was saying to me that, whatever happened, I was to be true, and that even if something quite unforeseen occurred to separate us, I was always to remember that I was pledged to him, and that he would claim his pledge sooner or later. It seemed strange talk for a wedding morning, but what has happened since gives a meaning to it. Well, certainly it does. Your own opinion is then that some unforeseen catastrophe has occurred to him. Yes, sir. I believe that he foresaw some danger, or else he would not have talked so. And then I think that what he foresaw happened. But you have no notion as to what it could have been? None. One more question. How did your mother take the matter? She was angry, and said that I was never to speak of the matter again. And your father? Did you tell him? Yes. And he seemed to think with me that something had happened, and that I should hear of Hasmir again. As he said, what interest could anyone have in bringing me to the doors of the church and then leaving me? Now, if he had borrowed my money, or if he had married me and got my money settled on him, there might be some reason. Hasmir was very independent about money, and never would look at a shilling of mine. And yet, what could have happened? And why could he not write? Oh, it drives me half mad to think of it, and I can't sleep a wink at night. She pulled a little handkerchief out of her muff and began to sob heavily into it. You really gotta feel bad for her. I think streamer bot also needs to be turned off and on. Jesus. Okay, so I temporarily won't be able to see chat. Give me like 2 seconds. Okay, so let me pull up chat again. There we go. That explains why I'm not able to message on YouTube. Okay. I shall glance into the case for you, said Mr. Holmes, rising, and I have no doubt that we shall reach some definite results. Let the weight of the matter rest upon me now, and do not let your mind dwell upon it further. Above all, try to let Mr. Hasmir Angel vanish from your memory, as he has done from your life. Then you don't think I'll see him again? Fear not. Then what has happened to him? We'll leave that question in my hand. I should like an accurate description of him and any letters of his which you can spare. I advertised for him in last Saturday's Chronicles, said she. Here is the slip, and here are 4 letters from him. Thank you. And your address? Number 31 Leon Place, Camberwell. It's the Angel's address you never had, I understand. Where is your father's place of business? He travels for Westhouse and Merbank, the great Harley and porters of Fenchurch Street. Thank you. You have made your statement very clearly. You will leave the papers here and remember the advice which I had given you. Let the whole incident be a sealed book, and do not allow it to affect your life. You are very kind, Mr. Holmes, but I cannot do that. I shall be true to Hasmir. You shall find me ready when he comes back. For all her to his hat and back to his face, there was something noble in the simple faith of our visitor, which compelled our respect. She laid her little bundle of papers upon the table and went her way, with a promise to come again whenever she might be summoned. Sherlock Holmes sat silent for a few minutes with his fingertips still pressed together, his legs stretched out in front of him, and his gaze directed upward to the ceiling. Then he took down from the rack the old and oily clay pipe, which was to him as a consoler and having a lid. He leaned back in his chair, with the thick blue cloud beads spinning up from him, and a look of infinite wonder in his face. "Quite an interesting study, that maiden," he observed. "Found her more interesting than her little problem, which, by the way, is rather a trite one. You will find parallel cases if you consult my index, and Andover in 77. And there was something of the sort at the ague last year. Old as is the idea, however, there were one or two details which were new to me, but the maiden herself was most instructive." "You appeared to read a good deal upon her, which was quite invisible to me," I remarked. "Not invisible, but unnoticed, Watson. You did not know where to look, and so you missed all that was important. I can never bring you to realize the importance of sleeves. The suggestion is of thumbnails, or the great issues that may hang from a bootlace. Now, what did you gather from that woman's appearance? Describe it." "Well, she had a slate-colored, broad-brimmed straw hat, with a feather of the brickish red. Her jacket was black, with black beads sewn upon it, and a fringe of a little black jet ornament. Her dress was brown, rather darker than coffee color, with a little purple flush at the neck and sleeves. Her gloves were grayish and were worn through at the right forefinger. Her boots I didn't observe. She had small, round, hanging gold earrings, and a general air of being fairly well-to-do in a vulgar, comfortable, easygoing way." Sherlock Holmes clapped his hands softly together and chuckled. "Upon my word, Watson, you are coming along wonderfully. You have really done very well indeed. It is true that you have missed everything of importance, but you have hit upon the method. You have a quick eye for color. Never trust to general impressions, my boy, but concentrate yourself upon details. My first glance is always at the woman's sleeve. In a man, it is perhaps better for us to take the knee of the trouser. As you observed, this woman had flesh upon her sleeves, which is a most useful material for showing traces, double line a little above the wrist, where the typewriter's pressed against the table is beautifully defined." Dee, hello! How are you doing today? Sewing machine of the hand type leaves a similar mark, but only on the left arm and on the side of its farthest from the thumb, instead of being right across the broadest part, as this was. I then glanced at her face, and then observing the dents of the pince-nez at either side of her nose, I ventured a remark upon short sight in typewriting, which seemed to surprise her. All right, Earl. I hope you enjoy the story. It surprised me, but surely it was obvious. I was then much surprised and interested on glancing down to observe that, though the boots which she was wearing were not unlike each other, they were really odd ones. The one having a slightly decorated toe cap, and the other a plain one. One was buttoned only in the 2 lower buttons out of 5, and the other at the 1st, 3rd, and 5th. Now, when you see that a young lady, otherwise neatly dressed, had come away from home with odd boots, half buttoned, it is no great deduction to say that she came away in a hurry. And what else? I asked, keenly interested, as I always was, by my friend's incisive reasoning. I noted in passing that she had written a note before leaving home, but after being fully dressed. You observed that her right ring was torn at the forefinger, but you did not apparently see that both gloves and fingers were stained with violet ink. She had written in a hurry and dipped her pen too deep. It must have been this morning, or the mark would not remain clear upon the finger. All this is amusing, though rather elementary. But I must go back to business, Watson. Would you mind reading me the advertised description of Mr. Kashmir Angel? I held the little printed slip to the light. Missing, it said. On the morning of the 14th, a gentleman named Kashmir Angel, about 5 feet 7 inches in height, strongly built, sallow complexion, black hair, a little bald in the center, bushy, black side whiskers and mustache, tinted glasses, slightly infirmity of speech, was dressed when last seen in black frock coat, faced with silk, black waistcoat, gold Albert chain, and gray Paris tweeded trousers with brown gaiters over elastic-sided boots, known to have been employed in an office in Leadenhall Street. Anybody bringing? Hopefully the cat will enjoy the book someday. That will do, said Holmes. As to the letters, he continued, glancing over them, they are very commonplace, absolutely no clue in them to Mr. Angel, save that he quoted blasé once. There is one remarkable point, however, which will no doubt strike you. They are typewritten, I remarked. Not only that, but the signature is typewritten. Look at the neat little Kashmir Angel at the bottom. There is a date, you see, but no superscription except Leadenhall Street, which is rather vague. The point about the signature is very suggestive. In fact, we may call it conclusive. Of what? My dear fellow, is it possible you did not see how strongly it bears upon the case? I cannot say that I do, unless it were that he wished to be able to deny his signature if an action for breach of promise were instituted. No, that was not the point. However, I shall write 2 letters, which should settle the matter. One is to a firm in the city. The other is to the young lady's stepfather, Mr. Windenbeck, asking him brother he could meet us here at 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. It's just as well that we should do business with the male relatives. And now, doctor, we can do nothing until the answers to those letters come. So, we may put our little problem upon the shelf for the interim. I had so many reasons to believe in my friend's subtle powers of reasoning and extraordinary energy in action that I felt that he must have some solid grounds for the assured and easy demeanor with which he treated the singular mystery which he had been called upon to fathom. Once only had I known him to fail. In the case of the King of Bohemia and of the Irene Adler photograph. But when I look back to the weird business of the Sign of Four and the extraordinary circumstances connected with the study in scarlet, I felt that it would be a strange tangle indeed, which he could not unravel. I left him then, still puffing at his black clay pipe, with a conviction that when I come again on the next evening, I would find that he had held in his hands all the clues which would lead up to the identity of the disappearing bridegroom of Miss Mary Sutherland. A professional case of great gravity was engaging my own attention at the time. The whole of next day I was busy at the bedside of the sufferers. It was not until close upon 6 o'clock that I found myself free and was able to spring into a hansom and drive to Baker Street. Half afraid that I might be too late to assist at the denouement of the little mystery. I found Sherlock Holmes alone, however, half asleep, with his long, thin form curled up in the recesses of his armchair. A formidable array of bottles and test tubes, with the clearly smell of hydraulic acid, told me that he had spent his day in the chemical work which was so dear to him. Well, have you solved it? I asked as I entered. Yes, it was the Visually of Barieta. No, the mystery, I cried. Oh, that. I thought of the salt that I have been working upon. There was never any mystery in the matter, though, as I said yesterday, some of the details are of interest. The only drawback is that there is no law, I fear, that can touch the scoundrel. Who was he, then, and what was his object in deserting Miss Sutherland? The question was hardly out of my mouth, and Holmes had not yet opened his lips to reply, when we heard a heavy footfall in the passage and a tap at the door. "This is the girl's stepfather, Mr. James Windibank," said Holmes. "He has written to me to say that he would be here at 6. Come in." The man who entered was a sturdy middle-sized fellow, some 30 years of age, clean-shaven and shallow-skinned, with a bland, initiating manner and a pair of wonderfully sharp and penetrating gray eyes. He shot a questioning glance at each of us, placed his shiny top hat upon the sideboard, and with a slight bow, slid down into the nearest chair. "Good evening, Mr. James Windibank," said Holmes. "I think that this typewritten letter is from you, in which you made an appointment with me for 6 o'clock?" "Yes, sir. I am afraid that I am a little late. I am not quite my own master, you know." "I am sorry that Miss Sutherland has troubled you about this little matter, for I think it is far better not to wash linen of the sort in panic. It was quite against my wishes that she came, but she is a very excitable, impulsive girl, as you must have noticed, and she is not easily controlled when she has made up her mind on a point. Of course, I did not mind you so much, as you are not connected with the official police, But it is not pleasant to have a family misfortune like this nose abroad. Besides, it is a useless expense, for how could you possibly find this Kashmir angel? Thank you, Al. On the contrary, said Holmes quietly. I have every reason to believe that I will succeed in discovering Mr. Kashmir Angel. Mr. Windbreaker gave a violent start and dropped his gloves. I am delighted to hear it, he said. It is a curious thing, remarked Holmes, that a typewriter has really quite as much infidelity as a man's handwriting. Unless you are quite new, no two of them were exactly alike. Some letters got more worn than others, and some were only on one side. Now you remark in this note of yours, Mr. Winnebank, that in every case there is some little slurring over the E and a slight defect in the tail of the R. There are 14 other characteristics, but those are the more obvious. We do all our correspondence with this machine at the office, and no doubt it is a little worn, our visitor answered, glancing keenly at Holmes with his bright little eyes. And now I will show you what is really a very interesting study, Mr. Winterbank. Holmes continued. I think of writing another little monograph some of these days on the typewriter and its relation to crime. It is a subject to which I have devoted some little attention. I have here 4 letters which purport to come from the missing man. They are all typewritten. In each case, not only are the E's slurred and the R's tailless, but you will observe, if you care to use my magnifying glass, that the 14 other characteristics to which I have alluded are there as well. Mr. Winterbrake sprung out of his chair and picked up his hat. I cannot waste time over this sort of fantastic talk, Mr. Holmes, he said. If you can catch the man, catch him, and let me know when you have done it. Certainly, said Mr. Holmes, stepping over to turning the key in the door. I'll let you know, then, that I have caught him. What? Where? Shouted Mr. Winterbank, turning white to his lips and glancing about him like a rat in a trap. Oh, it won't do, really, it won't, said Holmes severely. There is no possible getting out of it, Mr. Winterbrake. It is quite too transparent, and it was a very bad compliment when you said that it was impossible for me to solve so simple a question. That's right. Sit down. Let us talk it over. Our visitor collapsed into a chair with a ghastly face and a glitter of moisture on his brow. It is not actionable, he stammered. I am very much afraid that it is not. But between ourselves, Winterbank, it was as cruel and selfish and heartless a trick in a petty way as ever come before me. Now let me just run over the course of events. You will contradict me if I go wrong. The man sat huddled in his chair, with his head sunk upon his breast, like one who was utterly crushed. Holmes stuck his feet up on the corner of the mantelpiece, and leaning back with his hands in his pockets, began talking rather to himself as it seemed than to us. The man married a woman very much older than himself for her money, said he, and he enjoyed the use of the money of the daughter as long as she lived with them. It was a considerable sum for people in the position, and the loss of it would have made a serious difference. It was worth the effort to preserve it. The daughter was of a good, admirable disposition, but affectionate and warm-hearted in her ways, though that it was evident that with her fair personal advantages and her little income, she would not be allowed to remain single long. Now, her marriage would mean, of course, the loss of 100 a year. So what does her stepfather do to prevent it? He takes the obvious course of keeping her at home and forbidding her to seek the company of people of her own age. But soon he found that would not answer forever. She became restive, insisted upon her rights, and finally announced her positive intention of going to a certain ball. What does her clever stepfather do then? He conceives an idea more creditable to his head than to his heart. With the convenience and assistance of his wife, he disguised himself, covered those keen eyes with tinted glasses, masked the face with a mustache and a pair of husky whiskers, sucked the clear voice into an insinuating whisper, and doubly sincere on account of the girl's short sight. He appears as Mr. Hasmir Angel, who keeps off other lovers by making love himself. It was only a joke at first, groaned our visitor, who never thought she would have been so carried away. Very likely not, however, that may be. The young lady was very decidedly carried away, and having quite made up her mind that her stepfather was in France, the suspicion of treachery never for an instant entered her mind. She was flattered by the gentleman's attention, and the effort was increased by the loudly expressed admiration of her mother. Then Mr. Angel began to call, for it was obvious that the matter should be pushed as far as it would go if a real effect were to be produced. There were meetings and an engagement, which would finally secure the girl's affections from turning towards anyone else. But the deception could not be kept up forever. These pretended journeys to France were rather cumbrous. The thing to do was clearly to bring the business to an end in such a dramatic manner that it would leave a permanent impression upon the young lady's mind and prevent her from looking upon any other suitor for some time to come. Hence those vows of fidelity extracted upon a testament, and hence also the allusions to a possibility of something happening on the very morning of the wedding. James Vanderbank wished Miss Sutherland to be so bound to Hasmir Angel and so uncertain as to his fate that for 10 years to come, at any rate, she would not listen to another man. As far as the church door he brought her, and then as he could go no further, he conveniently vanished away by the old trick of stepping in at one door of a four-wheeler and out at the other. I think that was the chain of events, Mr. Windbreak. Everett had recovered something of his assurance, while Holmes had been talking, and he rose from his chair, now with a cold sneer upon his pale face. "It may be so, it may not, Mr. Holmes," said he, "but if you are very sharp, you ought to be sharp enough to know that it is you who are breaking the law now, and not me. I have done nothing accountable from the first, but as long as you keep that door locked, you lay yourself upon the action for assault and illegal constraint." "The law cannot, as you say, touch you," said Holmes, unlocking the door open. "Yet there never was a man who deserved punishment more. If the young lady has a brother or a friend, he ought to lay a whip across your shoulders. By Jove," continued flashing up at the sight of the bitter sneer upon the man's face. It is not part of my duties to my client, but here's a hunting crop handy, and I think I shall just treat myself too. He took 2 swift steps to the whip, but before he could grasp it, it was there with a wild clapper of steps upon the stairs. The heavily hall door banged, and from the window we could see Mr. James Winterberg running at the top of his speed down the road. "There's a cold-blooded scoundrel," said Holmes, laughing as he threw himself down into his chair once more. "That fellow will rise from the crime to crime until he does something very bad. It ends on the gallows. The case has, in some respects, been not entirely devoid of interest." "I cannot now entirely see all the steps of your reasonings," I remarked. "Well, of course, it was obvious from the first that this Mr. Esmer Angel must have some strong object for his curious conduct, and it was equally clear that the only man who really profited by the incident, as far as we could see, was the stepfather. Then, the fact that the 2 men were never together, but that the one always appeared when the other was away, was suggestive. So were the tinted spectacles and the curious voice, which both hinted at a disguise, as did the bushy whiskers. My suspicions were all confirmed by this peculiar action in typewriting his signature, which of course inferred that his handwriting was so familiar to her that she would recognize even the smallest sample of it. You see, all these isolated facts together, with many minor ones, all pointed in the same direction. "And how did you verify them?" "Having once spotted my man, it was easy to get corroboration. I knew the firm for which this man worked. Having taken the printed description, I eliminated everything from it, which could be the result of disguise. The whiskers, the glasses, the voice, and I sent it to the firm with a request that they would inform me rather it would answer to the description of any of their travelers. I'd already noticed the peculiarities of the typewriter, and I wrote to the man himself at his business address asking him if he would come here. As I expected, his reply was typewritten and revealed the same trivial but character defects. The same post brought me a letter from West House and Burbank of Fenchurch Street to say that the descriptions tallied in every respect with that of their employee, James Winterbank. Voila. And Miss Sutherland? If I tell her, she will not believe me. You may remember the old person saying there is danger for him who's tinketh the tiger cub, and danger also for whoso snatches a delusion from a woman. There is as much sense in Hafiz as in Horace, and as much knowledge of the world. And that is the end of the case of identity. Okay, so let me copy the title of this one. I'm not sure if YouTube will let me edit the title. I don't want to risk it. So we're going to change it on Twitch. And let me quickly go into OBS. I think it's this one. Okay, so the next story is called The Boscombe Valley Mystery. We were seated at breakfast one morning, my wife and I, when the maid brought in a telegram. It was from Sherlock Holmes and ran in this way. Have you a couple of days to spare? Have you been wired for from the west of England in connection with the Boscombe Valley tragedy? Shall be glad if you will come with me. Air and scenery perfect. Leave Paddington by the 11:15. What do you say, dear? Said my wife, looking across at me. Will you go? Really don't know what to say. I have a fairly long list at present. Oh, and Ruther will do your work for you. You have been looking a little pale lately. I think that the change would do you good. And you're always so interested in Mr. Holmes's cases. I should be ungrateful if I were not, seeing what I gained through one of them, I answered. But if I am to go, I must pack at once, for I only have half an hour. My experience of camping in Afghanistan had at least had the effect of making me a prompt and ready traveler. My wants were few and simple, so that in less than the time stated, I was in a cab with my ballast, rattling away to Paddington Station. Sherlock Holmes was pacing up and down the platform, his tall, gaunt figure made even gaunter and taller by his long gray traveling cloak and close-fitted close cap. It is really very good of you to come, Watson, said he. It makes a considerable difference to me, having someone with me on whom I can thoroughly rely. Local aid is always either worthless or else biased. If you will keep the two corners seated, I shall get the tickets. We had the carriage to ourselves, save for an immense litter of papers which Holmes had brought with him. Among these, he rummaged and read, with intervals of note-taking and of medication, until we were past reading. Then he suddenly rolled them all into a gigantic ball and tossed them up onto the rack. Have you heard anything of the case? He asked. Not a word. I have not seen a paper for some days. The local press has not had very full accounts. I have just been looking through all the recent papers in order to master particulars. It seems, from what I gather, to be one of those simple cases which are so extremely difficult. That sounds a little paradoxical, but it is profoundly true. Singularity is almost an embarrassingly a clue. The more featureless and commonplace a crime is, the more difficult it is to bring it home. In this case, however, they have established a very serious case against the son of the murdered man. It is a murder, then? Well, it is considered to be so. I shall take nothing for granted until I have the opportunity of looking personally into it. I will explain the state of things to you, as far as I have been able to understand it, in a very few words. Boscombe Valley is a country district not very far from Ross, and Herefordshire, the largest landed operator in that part is a Mr. John Turner, who made his money in Australia and returned some years ago to the old country. One of the farms which he held, that of Hathaway, was let to Mr. Charles McCarthy, who was also an ex-Australian. The men had known each other in the colonies, so that it was not unnatural that when they came to settle down, they should do so as near each other as possible. Conan was apparently the richest man, so McCarthy became his tenant, but still remained, it seems, upon terms of perfect equality, as they were frequently together. McCarthy had one son, a lad of 18, and Turner had an only daughter of the same age, but neither of them had wives living. They appeared to have avoided the society of the neighboring English families, and so have led retired lives. Though both the McCarthys were fond of sport and were frequently seen at the race meetings of the neighborhood. McCarthy kept 2 servants, a man and a girl. Turner had a considerable household, some half-dozen at the least. That is as much as I have been able to gather about the families. Now for the facts. On June 3rd, that is on Monday last, McCarthy left his house at Hatherley about 3 in the afternoon and walked down to Boscombe Pool, which is a small lake formed by the spreading out of the stream which runs down the Boscombe Valley. He had been out with his serving man in the morning at Ross, and he had told the man that he must hurry, as he had an appointment of importance to keep at 3. From that appointment, he never came back alive. From Hartherley farmhouse to the Boscombe Pool is a quarter of a mile, and the 2 people saw him as he passed over this ground. One was an old woman, whose name is not mentioned. The other was William Crowder, a gamekeeper in the employ of Mr. Turner. Both these witnesses deposed that Mr. McCarthy was walking alone. Gamekeeper added that within a few minutes of him seeing Mr. McCarthy pass, he had seen his son, Mr. James McCarthy, going the same way with a gun under his arm. To the best of his belief, the father was actually in sight at the time, and the son was following him. He thought no more of the matter until he heard in the evening of the tragedy that had occurred. So they probably assumed the son killed him. Oof. The 2 McCarthys were seen after the time when William Crowder, the gamekeeper, lost sight of them. The Boscombe Pool is a thickly wooded area with just a fringe of grass and a reed around the edges. A girl of 14, Patience Moran, who is the daughter of the lodgekeeper of Boscombe Valley Estate, was in one of the woods picking flowers. She states that while she was there, she saw, at the border of the wood enclosed by the lake, Miss McCarthy and his son, and they appeared to be having a violent quarrel. She heard Mr. McCarthy, the elder, using very strong language to his son, and she saw the latter rising up his hands as if to strike his father. She was so frightened by the violence that she ran away and told her mother when she reached home that she had left the 2 McCarthys quarreling near Boscombe Pool, and that she was afraid that they were going to fight. She had hardly said the word when young Mr. McCarthy came running up to the lodge to say that he had found his father dead in the woods, and to ask for help at the lodgekeeper. He was much excited without either his gun or his hat, and his right hand and sleeve were observed to be stained with fresh blood. On following him, they found the dead body stretched out upon the grass beside the pool. The head had been beaten in by repeated blows of some heavy and blunt weapon. The injuries were such as might very well have been inflicted by the butt end of his son's gun, which was found laying on the grass within a few places of the body. Under the circumstances, the young man was instantly arrested, and a verdict of willful murder had been returned at the inquest on Tuesday. He was on Wednesday brought before the magistrates at Ross, who have referred the case to the next assizes. Those are the main facts of the case as they come out before the coroner and the police court. I could hardly imagine a more damning case, I remarked. If ever circumstantial evidence pointed to a criminal, it does so here. Circumstantial evidence is a very tricky thing, answered Holmes thoughtfully. It may seem to point very straight to one thing, but if you shift your own point of viewing a little, you may find it pointing in an equally comprising manner to something entirely different. It must be confessed, however, that the case looks exceedingly grave against the young man. It is very possible that he is indeed the culprit. There are several people in the neighborhood, however, and among them Miss Turner, the daughter of the neighboring landowner, who believe in his innocence, and who have retained Lestrade, whom you may recollect in connection with the study in Scarlet, to work out the case in his interest. Lestrade, being rather puzzled, has referred the case to me, and hence it is that two middle-aged gentlemen are flying westward at 50 miles an hour instead of quietly digesting their breakfast at home. I am afraid, said I, that the facts are so obvious that you will find little credit to be gained out of this case. There is nothing more deceptive than an obvious fact, he answered, laughing. Besides, we may chance to hit upon some other obvious facts, which may have been by no means obvious to Mr. Lestrade. You know me too well to think that I am boasting when I say that I shall either confirm or destroy his theory by means which he is quite incapable of employing, or even of understanding. To take the first example to hand, I very clearly perceive that in your bedroom, the window is upon the right-hand side, and yet I question whether Mr. Lestrade would have noted even so self-evident a thing as that. How on earth? My dear fellow, know you well. I know the military neatness which characterizes you. You shave every morning, and in this season you shave by the sunlight. But since your shaving is less and less complete as we get further back on the left side, until it becomes positively slovenly as we get around the angle of the jaw, it is surely very clear that the side is less illuminated than the other. I could not imagine a man of your habits looking at himself in an equal light and being satisfied with such a result. I only quote this as a trivial example of the observation and inference. Therein lies my métier, and it is just possible that it may be of some service in the investigation which lies before us. There are one or two minor points which were brought out in the inquest and which are worth considering. What are they? It appears that his arrest did not take place at once, but after the return to Heatherley Farm, the inspector constantly informing him that he was a prisoner. He remarked that he was not surprised to hear it, and that it was no more than his deserts. This observation of his had the neutral effect of removing any trace of doubt which might have remained in the mind of the coroner's juries. It was a confession? I ejaculated. No, for it was followed by a protestation of innocence. Coming on the top of such damning series of events, It was at least a most suspicious remark. On the contrary, said Holmes, it is the brightest rift which I can at present see in the clouds. However innocent he might be, he cannot be such an absolute imbecile as not to see that the circumstances were very black against him. Had he appeared surprised at his own arrest or feigned indignation at it, I should have looked upon it as highly suspicious, because such surprise or anger would not be natural under the circumstances, and yet might appear to be the best policy to a scheming man. His frank acceptance of the situation marks him as either an innocent man or else as a man of considerable self-restraint and firmness. As to his remark about his desert, it was also not unnatural if you consider that he stood beside the dead body of his father, and that there is no doubt he had the very day so far forgotten his affiliate duty as to bandy words with him, and even according to the little girl whose evidence is so important, to raise his hand as if to strike him. The self-reproach and contrition which are displayed in his remark appear to me to be the signs of a healthy mind rather than a guilty one. I shook my head. Many men have been hanged on far a slighter evidence, I remarked. So they have, and many men have been wrongfully hanged. What is the young man's own account of the matter? It is, I am afraid, not very encouraging to his supporters. Well, there are one or two points in it which are suggestive. You will find it here, and may read it for yourself. He picked out from his bundle a copy of the local Herefordshire paper, and having turned down the paper, he pointed out the paragraph in which the unfortunate young man had given his own statement of what had occurred. I settled myself down in the corner of the carriage and read it very carefully. It ran in this way. Mr. James McCarthy, the only son of the deceased, was then called to give evidence as follows. I had been away from home for 3 days at Bristol, and had only just returned upon the morning of last Monday, the 3rd. My father was absent from home at the time of my arrival, and I was informed by the maid that he had driven over to Ross with John Cobb, the groom. Shortly after my return, I heard the wheels of his trap in the yard, and looking out of my window, I saw him get out and walk rapidly out of the yard, though I was not aware in which direction he was going. I then took my gun and strode out in the direction of Boscombe Pool, with the intention of visiting the rabbit warren, which is upon the other side. On my way, I saw William Crowder, the gatekeeper, as he had stated in his evidence. But he is mistaken in thinking that I was following my father. I had no idea that he was in front of me. When about 100 yards from the pool, I heard a cry of a Coe, which was a usual signal between my father and myself. I then hurried forward and found him standing by the pool. He appeared to be in much surprise of seeing me and asked me rather roughly what I was doing there. A conversation ensued which led to high words and almost to blows, for my father was a man of a very violent temper. Seeing that his passion was becoming ungovernable, I left him and returned towards Hatherley Farm. I had not gone more than 150 yards, however, when I heard a hideous outcry behind me, which caused me to run back again. I found my father expiring upon the ground, with his head terribly injured. I dropped my gun and held him in my arms, but he almost instantly expired. I knelt beside him for some minutes, and then made my way to Mr. Turner's lodgekeeper, his house being the nearest, to ask for assistance. My son is nowhere near my father when I return, and I have no idea how he came by his injuries. He was not a popular man, being somewhat cold and forbidding in his manners. But he had, as far as I know, no active enemies. I know nothing further of the matter. Coroner, did your father make any statement to you before he died? Witness. He mumbled a few words, but I could only catch some allusion to a rat. Coroner, what did you understand by that? Witness. It conveyed no meaning to me. I thought he was delirious. Coroner, what was the point upon which you and your father had his final quarrel? I should prefer not to answer. The Coroner, I am afraid that I must press it. Witness, it is really impossible for me to tell you. I can assure you that it has nothing to do with the sad tragedy which followed. The Coroner, that is for the court to decide. I need not point out to you that your refusal to answer will prejudice your case considerably in any further proceedings which may arise. Witness, I must still refuse. The Coroner, I understand that the cry of Koi was a common syllable between you and your father. It was. The Coroner, how was it, then, that he uttered it before he saw you, and before he even knew that you had returned to Bristol? Witness, with considerable confusion, I do not know. Juryman, did you see nothing which aroused your suspicions when you returned on hearing the cry and found your father fatally injured? Witness, nothing definite. The Coroner, what do you mean? Witness, I was so disturbed and excited as I rushed out into the open that I could think of nothing except of my father. Yet I have a vague impression that as I ran forward, something lay upon the ground to the left of me. It seemed to me to be something gray in color, a coat of some sort, or a plaid perhaps. When I arose from my father, I looked around for it, but it was gone. Do you mean that it disappeared before you went for help? Yes, it was gone. You cannot say what it was? No, I had a feeling something was there. How far from the body? 12 yards or so. And how far from the edge of the woods? About the same. I'm not sure who's talking, but okay. And how far from the edge of the woods? About the same. Then if it was removed, it was while you were a dozen yards of it? Yes, but with my back towards it. This concluded the examination of the witness. I see, said I as I glanced down the column. The Coroner in his concluding remarks was rather severe upon young McCarthy. He calls attention with reason to the discrepancy about his father having signaled to him before seeing him, also to his refusal to give details of his conversation with his father, and a singular account of his father's dying words. They are all, as he remarked, very much against the son. Holmes laughed softly to himself, and stretched himself out upon the cushioned seat. Both you and the Coroner had been at some pains, said he, to single out the very strongest points in the young man's favor. Don't you see that you ultimately gave him credit for having too much imagination, and too little? Too little if he could not invent a cause of quarrel which would give him the sympathy of the jury. Too much if he evolved from his own inner consciousness anything so outraged as a dying reference to a rat in the incident of vanishing cloth. No, sir. I shall approach this case from the point of view that what this young man says is true. We shall see whether the hypothesis will lead us. And now here is my pocket cartridge, and not another word shall I say of this case until we are on the scene of action. We lunch at Swindon, and I see that we shall be there in 20 minutes. It was nearly 4 o'clock when we, at least after passing through the beautiful Strahd Valley and over the broad, gleaming cavern, found ourselves at the pretty little country town of Ross. A lean, fair-like man, furtive and sly-looking, was waiting for us upon the platform. In spite of the light brown dust coat and leather leggings, which he wore in defense to his rustic surroundings, I had no difficulty in recognizing Lestrade of Scotland Yard. With him, we drove to Hereford Arms, where a room had already been engaged for us. I have ordered a carriage, said Lestrade, as we sat over a cup of tea. I knew your energetic nature, and that you would not be happy till you had been on the scene of the crime. It was very nice and complimentary of you, Holmes answered. It is entirely a question of barometric pressure. Lestrade looked startled. I do not quite follow, he said. How is the glass? 29, I see. No wind, and not a cloud in the sky. I have a case full of cigarettes here, which need smoking, and the sofa is very much superior to the usual country hotel abomination. I do not think that is probable that I shall use a cigarette. I shall use the carriage tonight. Lestrade laughed intelligently. You have no doubt already formed your conclusions from the newspapers, he said. The case is as plain as pikestaff, and the more one goes into it, the plainer it becomes. Still, of course, one can't refuse a lady, and such a very positive one, too. She has heard of you, and would have your opinions, though. I repeatedly told her that there was nothing which you could do, which I had not already done. Why, bless my soul, here is her carriage at the door. He had hardly spoken before there rushed into the room one of the most lovely young women that I have ever seen in my life. Her violet eyes shining, her lips parted, a pink flush upon her cheeks, all thought of her natural reserve lost in her overpowering excitement and concern. Oh, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, she cried, glancing from one to the other of us, and finally, with a woman's quick intuition, fastening upon my companion. I am so glad that you have come. I have driven down to tell you so. I know that James didn't do it. I know it. I want you to start upon your work knowing it too. Never let yourself doubt upon that point. We have known each other since we were little children. I know his fault as no one else does. But he is so tender-hearted to hurt a fly. Such a charge is absurd to anyone who really knows him. I hope he may clear him, Miss Turner, said Sherlock Holmes. He may rely upon doing all that I can. But you have read the evidence. You have formed some conclusion. Do you not see some loophole? Some flaw? Do you not yourself think that he is innocent? I think that it is very probable. There now, she cried, throwing back her head and looking defiantly at Lestrade. He gives me hopes. The stray shrugged his shoulders. I'm afraid that my colleague has been a little quick in forming his conclusions, he said. But he is right. Oh, I know that he is right. James never did it. And about his quarrel with his father, I am sure that the reason why he would not speak about it is to the coroner was because I was concerned in it. In what way? Asked Holmes. It is no time for me to hide anything. James and his father had many disagreements about me. Mr. McCarthy was very anxious that there would be a marriage between us. James and I have always loved each other as brother and sister, but of course he is young and has seen very little of life yet. And well, he naturally did not wish to do anything like that yet. So there were quarrels, and this, and I am sure, was one of them. And your father? Asked Holmes. Was he in favor of such a union? No, he was averse to it also. No one but Mr. McCarthy was in favor of it. A quick blush passed over her flesh. Over her fresh face. Holmes shot one of his keen questioning glances at her. Thank you for this information, said he. May I see your father if I call tomorrow? I am afraid the doctor won't allow it. The doctor? Yes, have you not heard? Poor father has never been strong for years back, but this has broken him down completely. He is taken to his bed, and Mr. Wiluff says that he is a wreck, and that his nervous system is shattered. Mr. McCarthy was the only man alive who had known Dad in the old days in Victoria. Huh, in Victoria? That is important. Yes, at the mines. Quite so. At the old gold mines, where, as I understand, Mr. Turner made his money? Yes, certainly. Thank you, Miss Turner. You have been of great assistance to me. You will tell me if you have any news tomorrow? No doubt you will go to the prison to see James. Oh, if you do, Mr. Holmes, do tell him that I know him to be innocent. I will, Miss Turner. I must go home now, for Dad is very ill, and he misses me so if I leave him. Goodbye, and God help you in your undertaking. She hurried from the room as impulsively as she had entered, and we heard the wheels of her carriage rattle off down the street. I am ashamed of you, Holmes, said Lestrade with dignity after a few minutes' silence. Why should you raise up hopes which you are bound to disappoint? I am not over-tendered of heart. Why call it cruel? I think that I see my ways to clearing James McCarthy, said Holmes. Have you an order to see him in prison? Yes, but only for you and me. Then I shall reconsider my resolution about going out. But I have still time to take a train to Hereford to see him tonight. Ample. Then let us do so. Alton, I fear that you will find it very slow, but I shall only be away a couple hours. I walked down to the station with them, and then wandered through the streets of the little town. Finally returning to the hotel, where I lay upon the sofa, trying to interest myself in a yellow-backed novel. The puny plot of the story was so thin, however, when compared to the deep mystery through which we were groping, and I found myself attention wander so continuously from the action to the fact that I last flung it across the room and gave myself up entirely to the consideration of the events of the day. Supposing that this unhappy young man's story were absolutely true, then what hellish thing, what absolutely unforeseen and extraordinary calamity could have occurred between the time when he parted from his father and the moment when, drawn back by his screams, he rushed into the glade. It was something terrible and deadly. What could it be? Might not the nature of the injuries reveal something to my medical instincts? I ran about and called for the weakly county paper, which contained a verbatim account of the inquest. In the surgeon's disposition, it was stated that the posterior third of the left parietal bone and the left half of the occipital bone have been shattered by a heavy blow from a blunt weapon. I marked the spot upon my own head. Clearly, such a blow must have been struck from behind. That was to some extent in favor of the accused, as when seen quarreling, he was face to face with his father. Though it did not go for very much, for the older man might have turned his back before the blow fell. Still, it might be worthwhile to call Holmes' attention to it. Then there was the peculiar dying reference to a rat. What could that mean? It could not be, delirium. A man dying from a sudden blow does not commonly become delirious. No, it was more likely to be an attempt to explain how he met his fate. But what could it induce? What could it indicate? I could felt my brain to find some possible explanation, and then the incident of the gray cloth seen by young McCarthy. If that were true, the murderer must have dropped some part of his dress, presumably his overcoat, in his flight, and must have had the hardihood to return and to carry it away at the instant when the sun was kneeling with his back turned, not a dozen paces off. What a tissue of mystery and improbabilities the whole thing was. I did not wander at Lestrade's opinion, and yet I had so much faith in Sherlock Holmes' insight that I could not lose hope as long as every fresh fact seemed to strengthen his conviction of young McCarthy's innocence. It was late before Sherlock Holmes returned. He came back alone, for Lestrade was staying in lodgings in the town. "The glass still keeps very high," he remarked as he sat down. "It is of importance that it should not rain before we are able to go over the ground. On the other hand, a man should be at his very best and keenest for such nice walks as that, and I did not wish to do it when fagged by a long journey. I have seen young McCarthy." "And what did you learn from him?" "Nothing." "Could he throw no light?" "Not at all." I was inclined to think at one time that he knew who had done it. It was screening him or her, but I am convinced now that he is as puzzled as everyone else. He is not a very quick-witted young youth, though only to look at, and I should think sound at heart. "I cannot admire his taste," I remarked. "If it is indeed a fact that he was averse to a marriage with so charming a young lady as Miss Turner. Thereby hangs a rather painful tale. This fellow is madly and insanely in love with her, but some 2 years ago, when he was only a lad, and before he really knew her, for she had been away 5 years at a boarding school, what does the idiot do but get into the clutches of a barmaid in Bristol and marry her at the registry office? No one knows a word of the matter, but you can imagine how maddening it must be to him to be upbraided by not doing what he would give his very eyes to do, but what he knows to be absolutely impossible. It was sheer frenzy of this sort which made him throw his hands up into the air when his father, at his last interview, was guarding him on to propose to Miss Turner. On the other hand, he had no means of supporting himself, and his father, who was by all accounts a very hard man, would have thrown him over utterly had he known the truth. It was with his barmaid wife that he had spent the last 3 days in Boscombe, and his father did not know where he was. Mark that point. It is of importance. The good has come out of evil. However, for the barmaid, finding from the papers that he is in serious trouble and likely to be hanged, has thrown him over utterly and has written to him to say that she has a husband already, and in the Bermuda dockyard, so that there is really no ties between them. I think that the bit of news has consoled young McCarthy for all that he has suffered. But if he is innocent, who has done it? Who? I will call your attention very particularly to 2 points. One is that the murdered man had an appointment with someone at the pool, and that the someone could not have been his son, for his son was away, and he did not know when he would return. The second is that the murdered man was heard to cry "Hoi," for he knew that his son had returned. Those are the critical points upon which the case depends. And now let us talk about George Murdet, if you please, and we shall leave all minor matters until tomorrow. There was no rain, as Holmes had foretold, and the morning broke bright and cloudless. At 9 o'clock, Lestrade called for us with the carriage. We set off for a Hatherley farm and the Boscombe pool. There is a serious news this morning, Lestrade observed. It is said that Mr. Turner of the Hall is so ill that his life is despaired of. An elderly man, I presume? Said Holmes. About 60, but his constitution has been shattered by his life abroad, and he has been in failing health for some time. This person has had a very bad, this business has had a very bad effect upon him. He was an old friend of McCarthy's, and may add a great benefactor to him, for I have learned that he gave him Hatherley Farm rent-free. Indeed, this is interesting, said Holmes. Oh yes, in 100 of the ways he has helped him. Everybody about here speaks of his kindness to him. Really, does it not strike you as a little singular that this McCarthy, who appears to have had little of his own and to have been under such obligations to Turner, should still talk of marrying his son to Turner's daughter, who is presumably heiress to the estates, and that is such a very cocksure matter, as if it were merely a case of proposal and all else would follow? It is the more strange since we know that Turner himself was adverse to the idea. Daughter told us as much. Do you not deduce something from that? We have got to the deductions and inferences, said Lestrade, winking at me. I find it hard enough to tackle facts, Holmes, without flying away after theories and fantasies. You are right, said Holmes. Really? You do find it very hard to tackle the facts. Anyhow, I have grasped one fact which you seem to find it difficult to get hold of, replied Lestrade with some warmth, and that is that McCarthy Sr. met his death from McCarthy Jr. All theories to the contrary are the merest moonshines. Well, the moonshine is a brighter thing, said Holmes, laughing, but I am very much mistaken if this is not Hatherley's farm upon the left. Yes, that is it. It was a widespread, comfortable-looking building, 2-story, slate roofed, with great yellow blotches of lichen upon the gray walls. The drawn blinds and the smokeless chimneys, however, gave it a stricken look, as though the weight of this horror still lay heavily upon it. We called at the doors when the maid, at Holmes' request, showed us the boots which her master wore at the time of his death, and also a pair of the son's, though not the pair which he had then had. Having measured these very carefully from 7 or 8 different points, Holmes desired to be led to the courtyard, for which we all followed the winding track which led to Boscombe Pool. Sherlock Holmes was transformed when he was hot upon such a scent as this. Men who had only known the quiet thinker and adjacent of Baker Street would have failed to recognize him. His face flushed and darkened. His brows were drawn into 2 hard black lines, while his eyes shone out from beneath them with a steely glitter. His face was bent downward, his shoulders bowed, his lips compressed, and the veins stood out like whipcords in his long, spindly neck. His nostrils seemed to dilate with a purely animal lust for the chase, and his mind was so absolutely concentrated upon the matter before him that a question or remark fell unheeded upon his ears, or at most only provoked a quick, impatient snarl in response. Swiftly and silently, he made his way along the track which ran through the meadows, and so by way of the woods to the Boscombe Pool. It was damp, marshy ground, as is all that this track, and there were marks of many feet, both upon the path and amid the short grass which bounded it on either side. Sometimes Holmes would hurry on, sometimes stop dead, and once he made quite a little detour into the meadow. Lestrade and I walked behind him, the detective indifferent and contemptuous, while I watched my friend with the interest which sprung from the conviction that every one of his actions was directed towards a definite end. The Boscombe Pool, which is a little curved sheet of water, some 50 yards across, is situated at the boundary between the Hartley farm and the private park of the wealthy Mr. Turner. Above the wood, when landed upon the farther side, we could see the red, jutted pinnacles which marked the site of the rich landowner's dwelling. On the Hartley side of the pool, the woods grew very quick, and there was a narrow belt of sodden grass 20 paces across between the edge of the trees and the reeds which lined the lake. Lestrade showed us the exact spot at which the body had been found, and indeed, so moist was the ground that I could plainly see the traces which had been left by the fall of the stricken man. To Holmes, as I could see by his eager face and peering eyes, very many other things were to be read upon the trampled grass. He ran round like a dog who was picking up a scent, and then turned upon my companion. "What did you go into the pool for?" he asked. "I finished about with a rake. I thought there might be some weapon or other trace. But how on earth? Oh, Tot, I have no time. That left foot of yours with its inward twist is all over the place. A mole could trace it, and there it vanishes among the reeds. Oh, how simple it would all have been had I been here before they came like a herd of buffaloes and wallowed all over it. Here is where the party with the lodge keeper came. They have covered all tracks for 6 or 8 feet round the body, but here are 3 separate tracks of the same feet. He drew out a lens and lay down upon the waterproof to have a better view. Talking all the time rather to himself than to us. These are young McCarthy's feet. Twice he was walking, and once he ran swiftly, so that the soles are deeply marked and the heels hardly visible. That bears out his story. He ran when he saw his father on the ground. Then here are the father's feet as he paced up and down. What is this then? Is it the butt end of the gun, or the son stood listening? And this, haha. What have we here? Tiptoes. Square too, quite unusual boots. They come, they go, they come again. Of course, that was for the cloak. Now where did they come from? He ran up and down something, sometimes losing, sometimes spotting the track until we were well within the edge of the wood and under the shadow of a great beech, the largest tree in the neighborhood. Holmes traced his way to the farther side of this and lay down once more upon his face with a little cry of satisfaction. For a long time he remained there, turning over the leaves and dried sticks, gathering up what seems to me to be dust into an envelope and examining with his lens not only the ground but even the bark of the tree as far as he could reach. A jagged stone was laying among the moss, and this also he clearly examined and retained. Then he followed a pathway through the wood until he came to the high road, where all traces were lost. It has been a case of considerable interest, he remarked, returning to his natural matter. I fancy that this grey house on the right must be the lodge. I think that I will go in and have a word with Moran, and perhaps write a little note. Having done that, we may drive back to our luncheon. You may walk to the cab, and I shall be with you presently. It was about 10 minutes before we regained our cab and drove back into Ross, Holmes still carrying with him the stone which he had picked up in the wood. It was about 10 minutes before we regained our cab and drove back into Ross, Holmes still carrying with him the stone which he had picked up in the woods. This may interest you, Lestrade, he remarked, holding it out. The murder was done with it. I see no marks. There are none. How do you know then? The grass was growing under it. It had only lain there a few days. There was no sign of a place whence it had been taken. It corresponds with the injuries. There is no sign of any other weapon. And the murderer is a tall man, left-handed, limp, with the right leg. Wears thick-soled shooting boots and a gray cloak. Smokes Indian cigarettes. Uses a cigar holder and carries a blunt knife in his pocket. There are several other indications, but these may be enough to aid us in our search. Lestrade laughed. I am afraid that I am still a skeptic, he said. Theories are are all very well, but we have to deal with a hard-headed British jury. Not Varens, answered Holmes calmly. You work your own method, I shall work mine. I shall be busy this afternoon, and shall probably return to London by the evening train. And leave your case unfinished? No, finished. But the mystery, it is solved. Who was the criminal then? The gentleman I subscribed. The gentleman I described. But who is he? Surely it would not be difficult to find out. Thank you for the streamer package. But who is he? Surely it would not be difficult to find out. This is not such a populous neighborhood. The stray shrugged his shoulders. I'm a practical man, he said. I really cannot undertake to go about the country looking for a left-handed gentleman with a game leg. I should become the laughingstock of Scotland Yard. All right, said Holmes quietly. I had given you the chance. Here are your lodgings. Goodbye. I shall drop you a line before I leave. Having left the street at his rooms, we drove to our hotel, where we found lunch upon the table. Holmes was silent and buried in his thoughts, with a pained expression upon his face, as one who finds himself in a perplexing position. Look here, Watson, he said when the cloth was cleared. Just sit down in this chair and let me preach to you for a little. I don't know what to do, and I should value your advice. Light a cigar and let me expound. Pray do so. Well now, in considering this case, there are 2 points about young McCarthy's narrative which struck us both instantly. Although they impressed me in his favor and you against him. One was the fact that his father should, according to his account, cry "Bowie" before seeing. The other was a singular direct reference to a rat. He mumbled several words, you understand, but that was all that caught the son's ear. Now, from this double point, our research must commence, and we will begin by presuming that what the lad says is absolutely true. And what of this Cowie then? Well, obviously, it could not have been meant for the son. The son, as far as he knew, was in Bristol. It was mere chance that he was within earshot. The Cowie was meant to attract the attention of whoever it was that he had the appointment with. But Cowie is distinctively Australian cry, and one which is used between Australians. There was a strong perception that the person who McCarthy expected to meet him at Boscombe Pool was someone who had been in Australia. What of the rat then? Sherlock Holmes took a folded paper from his pocket and flattened it out on the table. This is a map of the colony of Victoria, he said. I wired to Bristol for it last night. He put his hands over part of the map. What do you read? A rat. I read, and now? He raised his hand. Ballarat. Quite so. That was the word the man uttered, and of which his son only caught the last two syllables. He was trying to utter the name of his murderer, so and so of Ballarat. It is wonderful, I exclaimed. It is obvious, and now you see I have narrowed the field down considerably. The possession of a grey garment was the third point which, granting the son's statement, hopefully the mic did not pick up my alarm. Let me turn these alarms off. I forgot about it. Digimon? No, yeah, I have like a different range of when people call me, but like I have it I just have it to play whatever's in my what is it? I have like a playlist on my YouTube Music, so it just plays whatever's in that mix. And Digimon just happens to be the first one that pops up. Yeah. I said, hey, I need something loud to wake me up. Sorry. Mind you, my phone is like on my desk. It's like not near my computer. It's like it's near my bed. Yeah, that's true. Okay, where were we? Let me see. Hold on. I wish. Okay, so I guess we'll start from this paragraph. I know, right? They'll probably have the cutest Digimon. With cute little detective hats. Hello, Sarah White Fox. How are you today? Bro, just like Detective Pikachu. Bruh, I want this cold to go away already. It's on a cooldown? It shouldn't be that long. Oh, there it is again. And thank you for the shimmer package. I do need to get more water though. I'm like low on both my bottles. So we will take a quick break for me to grab more water, and then we continue the story. Oh, Jesus Christ, 10 seconds. So I will be right back, everyone.
Make it count. It's a life, and we live it loud. We don't stop here, we keep on dreaming. Set the goals and we will achieve them. It's a time, and we'll make it count. We take each day and make it better. And we don't give in to the pressure. Every day we find a way to keep our feet firm on the ground. We take a stand before we have to a cause and we are proud. Oh, watch us close, 'cause we will grow and become unstoppable. Become unstoppable. We take our dreams and make them real, 'cause nothing is impossible. It's a time, and we'll make it count. It's a life, and we live it loud. We don't stop here, we keep on dreaming. Set new goals and we will achieve them. It's a time, and we'll make it count. We pave the way for generations.
Okay. I have returned with more water. Looks like I might have to reconfigure SiriBot, because like it's not telling me when an ad is going on. Which is weird because it's just randomly giving me, oh, the ad is finished. I say, wait a minute, when did it start? Okay, so we will, since I kind of lost my place, we're gonna reread this paragraph. Yes, we are reading Sherlock Holmes today. Yeah, I know, Al. It started during the BRB screen, but like SiriBot is supposed to give you the message that it's starting the ad over on Twitch, but it isn't. And I know I might have to reauthorize SiriBot because there was something they're saying about the bot that we all reauthorize it. I didn't reauthorize it, so that might be the issue. I might have to do that like off stream though. Okay, so, quite so. That was the word the man uttered, and of which his son only caught the last two syllables. He was trying to utter the name of his murderer, and so, Ballarat. It is wonderful, I exclaimed. It is obvious, and now you see. I had narrowed the field down considerably. The possession of gray garment was a third point which, granting the son's statement to be correct, was a certainty. We have come now out of mere vagueness to the definite conception of an Australian from Ballarat with a grey cloak. Certainly, and one who was at home in the district, where the pool can only be approached by the farm or by the estate, where strangers could hardly wander. Quite so. Then comes our expedition of today. By examination of the ground, I gained the trifling details which I gave to that imbecile Lestrade as to the personality of the criminal. But how did you gain them? You know my method. It is founded upon the observation of trifles. Trifles. His height I know, that you might roughly judge from the length of his stride. His boots, too, might be told from their traces. Yes, they were peculiar boots. But his lameness? The impression of his right foot was always less distinct than his left. He puts less weight upon it. Why? Because he's limped. He was lame. But his left-handedness. You were yourself struck by the nature of the injury, but as recorded by the surgeon at the inquest. The blow was struck from immediately behind, and yet was upon the left side. Now, how can that be unless it were by a left-handed man? He had stood behind that tree during the interview between the father and the son. He had even smoked there. I found the ash of a cigar, which my special knowledge of tobacco ashes enables me to pronounce as an Indian cigar. I have, as you know, devoted some attention to this. I written a little monogram on the ashes of 140 different varieties of pipe, cigar, and cigarette tobacco. Having found the ash, I then looked around and discovered the stump among the moss where he had tossed it. It was an Indian cigar, of the variety which are rolled in Rotterdam. In the cigar holder, I could see that the end had not been in his mouth. Therefore, he used a holder. The tip had been cut off, not bitten off, but the cut was not a clean one, so I deducted a blunt and a pen knife. Holmes, I said, you have drawn a net around this man from which he cannot escape, and you have saved an innocent human life as truly as you had cut the cord which was hanging him. I see the direction in which all this points. The culprit is... Mr. John Turner, cried the hotel waiter, opening the door of our sitting room and ushering in a visitor. The man who entered was a straight and impressive figure. His slow, unmoving step and bowed shoulders gave the appearance of decrepitude, and yet his head, deep limbed, craggy features, and enormous limbs showed that he was possessed of unusual strength of body and of character. His tangled beard, grizzled hair, and outstanding, drooping eyebrows combined to give an air of dignity and power to his appearance. But his face was of ashen white, while his lip and the corners of his nostrils were tinged with a shade of blue. It was clear to me at a glance that he was in the grip of some deadly and chronic disease. Pray sit down on the sofa, said Holmes gently. You had my note? Yes, the lodge keeper brought it up. You said that you wished to see me here to avoid a scandal? I thought people would talk if I went to the hall. And why did you wish to see me? And why do you wish to see me? He looked across at my companion with despair in his weary eyes, as though his question was already answered. Yes, said Holmes, answering the look rather than the words. It is so. I know all about McCarthy. The old man sank his face in his hand. God help me, he cried. For I would not have let the young man come to harm. I gave you my word that I would have spoken out if it went against him at the hazard. I am glad to hear you say so, said Holmes gravely. I would have spoken now, but it had not been for my dear girl. It would break her heart. It will break her heart when she hears that I am arrested. It may not come to that, said Holmes. What? I am no official agent. I understand that it was your daughter who required my presence here, and I am acting in her interest. Young McCarthy must be got off, however. I am a dying man, said old Turner. I have had diabetes for years. Our doctor says it is a question whether I shall live a month. Yet I would rather die under my own roof than in a gaol. Holmes rose and sat down at the table with his pen in his hand and a bundle of paper before him. Just tell us the truth, he said. I shall jot down the facts. You will sign it, and Watson here can witness it. Then I could produce your confession at the last extremity to save young McCarthy. I promise you that I shall not use it unless it is absolutely needed. It's as well, said the old man. It's a question whether I shall live as is disease, so it matters little to me. But I should wish to spare Alice the shock. And now I will make the thing clear to you. It has been a long time in the acting, but will not take me long to tell. You didn't know this dead man, McCarthy. He was a devil incarnate, I tell you that. God keep you out of the clutches of such a man as he. His grip has been upon me these 20 years, and he has blasted my life. I'll tell you first how I came to be in his power. It was in the early 60s at the diggings. I was a young chap and hot-blooded and reckless, ready to turn my hand at anything. I got on my bad companions, took the drink, had no luck with my claim, took to the bush, and in a word, it became what you would call over here a highway robber. There were 6 of us, and we had a wild, free life of it, sticking up a station from time to time or stopping the wagons on the road to the diggings. Black Jack of Ballarat was the name I went under, and our party is still remembered in the colony as the Ballarat Gang. One day, a gold convoy came down from Ballarat to Malvern, and we lay in wait for it and attacked it. There were 6 troopers and 6 of us, so it was a close thing. But we emptied 4 of their saddles at the Furze Valley. 3 of our boys were killed. However, before we got the swag, I put my pistol to the head of the wagon driver, who was this very man McCarthy. I wished to the Lord that I had shot him then, but I spared him, though I saw his wicked little eyes fixed on my face, as though to remember every feature. We got away with the gold, became wealthy men, and made our way over to England, without being suspected. There I parted from my old pals and determined to settle down to a quiet and reasonable life. I bought this estate, which chanced to be in the market, and I set myself to do a little good with my money, to make up for the way in which I had earned it. I married, too, and though my wife died young, she left me my dear little Alice. Even when she was just a baby, her wee hands seemed to lead me down the right path as nothing else had ever done. In a word, I turned over a new leaf, and did my best to make up for the past. All was going well when McCarthy laid his grip on me. I had gone up to town about an investment, and I met him in Regan Street with hardly a coat to his back, or a boot to his foot. "Here we are, Jack," says he, touching me on the arm. "We'll be as good as a family, too. There's 2 of us, me and my son, and you can have the keepings of us. If you don't, it's a fine law-abiding country in England, and there's always a policeman within hail." Well, down they came to the West Country. There was no shaking them off, and there they had lived rent-free on my best land ever since. There was no rest for me, no peace, nor forgetfulness. Then turn where I would, there was his cunning grinning face at my elbow. It grew worse as Alice grew up, for he soon saw I was more afraid of her knowing my past than of the police. Whatever he wanted, he must have, and whatever it was, I gave him without question. Land, money, houses, until at last he asked the thing which I could not give. He asked for Alice. His son, you see, had grown up, and so had my girl. And as I was known to be in weak health, it seemed a fine stroke to him that his lad should step into the whole property. But there I was firm. I would not have his cursed stock mixed with mine. Not that I had any dislike to the lad, but his blood was in him, and that was enough. I stood firm. McCarthy threatened. I braved him to do his worst. We were to meet at the pool midway between our houses to talk it over. When I went down there, I found him talking with his son, so I smoked a cigar and waited behind a tree until he should be alone. But as I listened to his talk, all that was black and bitter in me seemed to come uppermost. He was urging his son to marry my daughter with as little regard for what she might think, as if she were a slut from off the streets. It drove me mad to think that I and all that I held most dear should be in power of such a man as this. Should I not snap the bond? I was already a dying and desperate man. Though clear of mind and fairly strong of limb, I knew that my own fate was sealed. But my memory and my girl, both could be saved if I could but silence that foul tongue. I did it, Mr. Holmes. I would do it again. Deeply as I have sinned, I had led a life of martyrdom to atone for. But that my girl shall be entangled in the same messes which held me was more than I could suffer. I struck him down with no more concussion than if he had been some foul and venomous beast. His pride brought back his son, but I had gained the cover of the wood, though I was forced to go back to fetch the cloak which I had dropped in my flight. That is the true story, gentlemen, of Holdeck. A father trying to protect his daughter. Well, it is not for me to judge you, said Holmes, as old man signed the statement which had been drawn out. I pray that we may never be exposed to such temptations. I pray not, sir. And what do you tend to do? In view of your health, nothing. You are yourself aware that you will soon have to answer for your deed at a higher court than asses. I will keep your confession, and if McCarthy is condemned, I shall be forced to use it. If not, it shall never be seen by mortal eyes, and your secret, whether you be alive or dead, shall be safe with us. Farewell, then, said the old man solemnly. Your own deathbeds, when they come, will be the easier for the thought of the peace which you have given to mine. Tottering and shaking all his giant frame, he stumbled slowly from the room. God help us, said Holmes after a long silence. Why does fate play such tricks with poor helpless worms? I never heard of such a case as this, that I did not think of Baxter's words and say, there, but for the grace of God, goes Sherlock Holmes. Jane McCarthy was acquitted at the on the strength of the number of objections which had been drawn out by Holmes and submitted to the defending counsel. Old Turner lived for 7 months after our interview, but he is now dead, and there is every prospect that the son and daughter may come to live happily together in ignorance of the black cloud which rests upon the past. And that is the end of the Boscombe Valley mystery. Yes. And I think that'll be good for tonight. At least story-wise. Okay, so... Oh, I love Sherlock Holmes stories. I was just trying to do them in order when I first realized I wasn't reading them in order. So I'm glad I did, what was it? A Study in Scarlet and The Sign of Four first. Before we went back to the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Yeah, it's like when we started the case of identity, the students I mentioned as like, you know, the first two stories, I said, oh, I'm glad that we decided to read those first. All right, so okay, so I think we're gonna raid out. So it looks like my best friend's one of her friends is actually live, and looks I don't know what he's playing though. It says he's playing 7 Days to Die, but it doesn't look like 7 Days to Die. So I don't know what he's playing. Now let me see if the raid message is still working. Thank you. Was the command raid? I don't remember. There it is. I had to put it in Twitch. Oh, weird. Alright, everyone. Those are the raid messages for those who are sub and not sub over on Twitch. We will be raiding. Let me just put this in real quick. He has a long name, so Sarah the Host, I think it's called. And according to he is playing. It looks like he's playing 7 Days to Die, but I am not 100% sure if that's actually what he's playing. And apparently, he's supposed to be playing PAL World, that new game later. Oh yes. So thank you everyone who came to the reading stream. I appreciate every one of you. I don't know if I will be streaming this weekend or not. We're still setting stuff up at the new apartment. But yeah, I'll let everyone know either on Discord or Twitter. Yes. And in the YouTube community tab as well. So, everyone have a good night, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!
You know how to make me feel better. 'Cause of you, nothing keeps me down. You've pulled me out of the deepest darkness. Took my hand and gave me a crown. I'm a mess, you call me royalty. Can't explain your perfect love for me. Every day you make me feel special. Yeah, you treat me like I'm your queen. Oh, you make me the happiest I've ever been.